Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. Cranked and ranked. That's what you're listening to or watching. And we're back to rank some more shit. And this is a special one, a fun one for sure. And for those of you who are new to this podcast or YouTube show, we
experience.
I like that even better. The YouTube experience. We're a podcast, and you can look at us also, and we rank things, rock and metal and music related, discographies of artists and other things. Whenever we, get a itching to do something else, we do that too. But today it's just a good old band discography, and we're giving it some time. Like this is obviously you saw the title. We're doing Pantera, which is a band that started not just a few hundred miles away from me, where I am right now. I'm in Houston, Texas. They started in the Dallas Fort Worth area. I don't know exactly where they were living at the time. Yeah. I don't know where they were living at the time in that particular when they first started, but anyway, so they're really close to my heart because they're a band from Texas, which is a state that has increasingly become a state that it's hard to find things to be proud of to be from here. And so Pantera is one of those things that like I'm like, yeah, they're from my state, so that's fucking sweet. But yes, introductions out of the way. Let's do this. I am Old Head. With me as always, Mr. Eddie Sparxx.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. Now I'm going to say, I know I probably don't need to say this, but I really hope we're going to get a whole lot of Phil Anselmo impressions in these two episodes because I love it.
You're goddamn right.
Yeah. You always got to remember when you're doing talkie Phil, you got to do a deep exhale after you say anything.
Yeah. Heroin needle in my goddamn dick.
that was so perfect. Anyway, so yes, we're doing Pantera, but we're breaking it up over 2 episodes, and we're including all Pantera albums. And not only that, like I decided kind of at the last minute that we're literally talking about Pantera albums from when they started in the early 80s all the way to when they broke up in the early 2000s. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, we're including all of that. And then, Dimebag literally just did one more album before he died, and that was Damageplan. And I'm like, well, shit, I feel like we need to include that too.
You gotta do it. Yeah,
because I figured that if we did Pantera and we didn't talk about Damageplan, people were going to ask, well, where would you rank Damageplan and with all of this stuff? So we are indeed doing that. So it's 10 albums total, 9 Pantera albums, 1 Damageplan album, celebrating the music that came from Mr. Dimebag Darrell. And as usual, we usually start off each of us explaining like where the band came into our lives, where we first heard them. And for me, it's weird because I know that they did music videos for, like Cemetery Gates and Cowboys from Hell, and they played them on Headbangers Ball. But for some reason, like I don't have any recollection of seeing those music videos. My first memory of Pantera is, I don't even think it was a music video. I think it was a friend of mine from school. Vulgar Display of Power had just come out, and they were like, you should listen to this. And I was just like, holy shit. Like it blew my mind. And then of course, I saw all the music videos that were out, and I've been a fan ever since. And it could be that maybe I did see, like the Cemetery Gates video, and maybe as a younger kid, it just didn't really do anything for me. Cause I would have been, 14 when Vulgar Display of Power came out. So that was right in that sweet spot of like I was really discovering. I was ready. I was like a sponge. I was like,
Yeah.
give me all the metal and all the cool shit that you can throw at me. And so when was your first exposure to Pantera?
Very early on in becoming a metalhead, roundabout when I was 11 or 12.
Mm-hmm.
And I've mentioned my uncle on here before. My Uncle
Yep.
Justin, he played a huge part in me, discovering all of the bands and stuff that I love. And he ripped me like a shitload of like music onto these it's funny, they were actually like DVDs,
Uh-huh.
but he'd found a way to like get shitloads of like CDs worth of music onto these DVDs, and then I basically ripped them all to iTunes. And I mean, it's not the most legal thing in the world, but it was a cool thing for him to do for a young kid getting into,
Yeah.
music. So,
Well, there's a difference between ripping a bunch of albums for your friend or your relative and then just letting everybody in the world have it.
that's true. Yeah.
A little bit different.
Yeah, or even worse, selling it, and making
That
money
too.
off of, yeah. So, yeah, basically, I just remember. Actually, here's the thing, though. Uh, my first exposure to Pantera was when I was a little kid, because they provided the music for a SpongeBob episode.
Oh yeah.
And it says at the start of the episode, anyone my age or anyone with kids my age has probably seen it, where it says special musical guest Pantera. And
Yeah.
it's so funny, like seeing SpongeBob get beat the hell up to death rattle. It's just like, when I look back now, I'm like, fuck yeah, man.
Yeah. Yep.
um but what was it? Yeah, anyway, I remember listening to Vulgar Display of Power because it came on the thing, and I just thought, damn, dude, like this really is the next logical step from, where Metallica took it with the Black Album sort of thing, and they were like, right, we've got these money riffs, and we're gonna take the whole damn song and make it the money riff. And yeah, from there I was just like, every Pantera song I heard, I was like, hell yeah.
Yeah.
And about 2 years later, I did the same thing with Pantera that I did with Faith No More. And I went into like HMV, and I found one of those like 5 album little CD packs. And I was
Yep.
like, this is like £3 an album, which was a great deal for me at the time because I only got like 5. I'm a young kid. I didn't have a job, so I
Yeah.
was like, fuck it. I've got £5 pocket money a week. This is 3 weeks. This is basically 3 weeks' wages for me, and I just
Yeah.
thought, £3 an album, 15 altogether, 15 quid for 5 albums. That's a good deal. So I thought, fuck it, have that. And it sits proudly right next to my Faith No More 5 CD pack. But I remember first like listening through all of them and being like, holy fuck, this is one of the most consistently good discographies I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's not the actual full discography either, which is an interesting thing that I'm sure we'll touch on a lot, because we're going to talk about all of the albums, even the albums that are from the era that some people, decided to call it Glam Terra, which, I mean, it's
Like one or two songs, but really the only thing glam about their 80s era is their look. Like the music is like speed metal and borderline thrash a lot of the time.
Well, even comparatively speaking, they don't seem as glam as like a lot of the glam music going on at the time. So it's more of a derogatory term for me, because I'm just like, well, it's it's different for sure. But the thing that's interesting to me is, it has been over the years, is the fact that not only do fans kind of pretend that doesn't exist, but the band would rarely even mention it. I saw an interview recently with Phil Anselmo and Rex Brown, and there was one of them actually briefly mentioned the earlier albums, and that was it. But there wasn't a discussion about it at all. But the fact to hear one of them mention them I'm just like, holy fuck, they exist.
Yeah.
And it's so weird because you would see like on MTV and stuff. I remember like seeing stuff for like Vulgar Display of Power, and they would interview the band and the band would say, yeah, it's our second album. Like they would call it their second album. And I'm like, are you guys really just like erase everything you did because it's not cool anymore or what? That's always been a thing that I've thought was a little bit weird, because I'm just like, you were young and you liked it at the time. You were doing the things that you wanted to do, and then you shifted your style. It happens. But it's always been weird to me to just write off that early stuff and be like, oh, it doesn't even exist, because it's, for what it is, it's pretty good. And so, you know,
maybe at the time it was more of a front to, maybe they could see what was happening with the changing of the guard, really, in terms of like grunge being more popular than glam. They were probably just trying to weather the storm. Like they were like,
in today's terms, it would be called a rebranding, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
And it is what it is. But yes, we're going to be talking about those. Before we jump into doing the discography, I had to bring up. So this episode will be coming out June 1st, and 2 days later, on June 3rd, is our 2-year anniversary of doing Cranked and Ranked. Well, it's a little bit, it had already kind of passed, because if those of you who've listened before, we actually recorded an episode that was supposed to be the first that didn't actually happen because of technical issues. But our very, I wasn't going to point the blame at you.
It's okay. I've embraced it. It's funny.
Our first episode that we ever released was released on June 3rd in 2020. And so it's been 2 entire years of us putting out Cranked and Ranked, with, you know, some breaks here and there, but for the most part, we've been pretty damn steady. A lot of podcasts that I listen to, there'll be like huge gaps of months with nothing coming out. I'm like, well, we've never done that. We've done a couple weeks at the most. So thanks to everybody for listening to us if you've been on for 2 years, then you are the ultimate peanut butter platypus. Speaking of that, each one of us has a piece of merch. If you're watching the, you have a mug too. If you're watching the YouTube video, Eddie is wearing his cool pink Cranked and Ranked shirt. And then I am drinking out of the Cranked and Ranked mug that says peanut butter platypus and has our lovely images on it. So go buy those. Go to, I always forget the fucking URL or whatever.
It's in the description.
myspreadshop.com. No, oldhead.myspreadshop.com or old-head.myspreadshop.co.uk, because you can get stuff from the UK. Recently we sold some stuff. It was some Old Head and some Cranked and Ranked merch to somebody in Australia.
Wow.
I'm just like, that's sweet.
Nice.
So yeah, cheers to everyone around the world that watches. So yeah, anyway, happy
day,
anniversary.
mate.
Yeah.
Let's put another shrimp on the barbie.
I'm sure they've never heard that before. We just love your Crocodile Dundee over here. But yes, happy anniversary, sir. It's been a fun couple years.
Hell yeah, brother.
And here's to many more years. So without further ado, we've done enough ado. Now let's do something else. Let's jump into ranking the albums. So it's going to be, since there's 10 albums, evenly split. Today's going to be the bottom 5. And like I said, we're including all Pantera albums and Damageplan's album, which is called New Found Power, I believe, if I remember right.
Yeah.
And so as usual, I throw it over to my good pal Eddie Sparxx to start it off with his number 10 Pantera album.
Cool. So before I go into it, I want to say I like every one of these albums.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
And it is simply a case of favorite to least favorite.
Mm-hmm.
But my bottom pick had to be Metal Magic from 1983.
The debut Metal Magic.
You can tell, like, right out of the gate, this is a band with promise, but it's very much in its infancy. They're figuring out, there's a lot of new wave of British heavy metal stuff going on in their influences and whatnot, but I'm going to jump in. Ride My Rocket, you can tell right out of the gate.
Ride my rocket!
Yeah.
It's a fun opener.
Like that is, but the thing is, I feel like that it's a really strong opening of like, hell yeah, like Ride My Rocket. Then it's like kind of like, oh, okay, this is like
but you have to admit, but it's a fun song, but it starts and you're literally like, oh, Detroit Rock City much?
I literally said in my notes, you can tell they like Kiss. Like,
yeah.
Because even Kiss did a song called fucking Rocket Ride. So
that was an Ace Frehley song. That's a great one.
Yeah, it is a good song. Yeah. But yeah, I'll Be Alright, killer riffage, very new wave British heavy metal. That solo, holy shit! And Dime is only like 16.
16, yeah. Or I mean that he was 16 when it came out. He may have been 15 when they recorded it. Fuck, I don't know how long it took to get it out.
Holy fuck!
A young pup, and he already was smoking pretty much everybody else, I'm sure, that was in other bands at the time.
Do you want to know what I was learning at 15 on guitar? The riff to Heart Shaped Box, let alone like the shit he's playing on here.
Yeah,
you know?
I was playing Nirvana and stuff like that. So the simplest shit. I still can't play much. I'm a good rhythm player, but any leads or solos, man, I'm stiff as a board, man. I can't. It's awful.
You gotta play to your strengths. Not everybody's the same, but yeah.
I'm all about the money riff. That's why I play rhythm.
Money riff. Tell Me If You Want It. Tell Me If You Want It is good fun.
Gotta point out. We gotta throw some props at Mr. Terry Glaze.
Yes.
Who is the vocalist on the first 3 Pantera albums, and he's on this album. I'm gonna say his vocals are the worst on this first album. It's very. Yeah, I don't know. It's like he didn't have the confidence. He gets a little bit more confident, with their second album. And then later on, if for those of you who don't know, he later in the 80s, in the early 90s, I don't remember when they started, but he was a singer of a band called Lord Tracy, which had the non-hit single, "See You Later, Baby, Going Out with the Boys."
Man, like. That's the thing. Like on this album, he's like still, kind of getting his confidence, and then you get Projects in the Jungle where he's like Joe Elliott on steroids.
Yeah.
And then
we'll get to
that. and then by like album number 3 with I Am the Night, he's just like absolutely venomous. He's got this real like gnarly shriek to him. But yeah, Latest Lover, the glammiest song on here yet. Rat levels of Hairspray. Biggest part of me, it's power ballad time. Metal Magic, for the most part though, this song has much more in common with speed metal and thrash than like glam. Widowmaker is more riffy early 80s metal stuff. Nothing on but the radio. Chorus bass, I love chorus effect on a bass. That is one of many 80s tricks that just tug on my heartstrings. Sad Lover is a plodding rocker, kind of rock out, ass kicking closer. It's a fun ride, pardon the pun, but it's definitely a band figuring out who they are, even if they do shred like fucking crazy.
There's something so adorable about a band at that point that not only named their album Metal Magic, but then also had a song called Rock Out. Like it makes me feel so excited for them, because they had to have been like imagine like being able to pull something together like that for your first album. Because it's not like an amazing album, but I can just feel the excitement of those young dudes, because the other guys were like 18, 19 years old. Like they were still teenagers technically. And so it's just, you hear that in this album where it just sounds like young kids having a good time,
Yeah, definitely. It's got a fun, youthful energy to it. That's its best quality. But that's my number 10 with Metal Magic. Over to you.
Cool. I'm going to stay in the same era as you, but not the same album. My number 10 is I Am the Night from 1985, the third album, and the last one with Terry Glaze on vocals. So the reason why this one ends up at number 10 for me is because when you go through Metal Magic and then Projects in the Jungle, I Am the Night is kind of just like more of the same. There's not a big enough progression there, and even then, even with no progression, it's almost like a little bit of a regression because Project in the Jungle is a very uh, cohesive, album where they had a sound they were going for, and here's what they did. But I Am the Night, very similar to Metal Magic, has this thing where it's like, oh, let's just grab from whatever types of metal we want to write a song. This one's a speed metal one, this one's a glam one, this one, and I Am the Night is all of a sudden going back to just doing that again.
Mhm.
And at that point, it wasn't interesting enough to make me go, oh, I'm happy to hear more of this. It's really like if you listen to all three albums in a row, you get to I Am the Night and you're like, look, this is good, but it's very clear that they need some new blood in that band. And then they would get it, and then on the next album. So the only thing that makes this album enjoyable for me is just the progression of the band and the progression of Dime as a guitar player, because they all sound fucking great. But songwriting wise, it just feels like they're kind of treading water, and they need something to like kind of boost them. So yeah, it just got a real sort of grab bag feel of what was going on at the time. And it's they just needed to find their own sound, and and they wouldn't necessarily do that with the next album, but I think that there's a definite transition that you hear. So I Am the Night to me is kind of like the end. If you were going to call things Glamterra, I wouldn't include power metal. I would end it here, because this is the last one where they seem just kind of fine with being this middle of the road metal band, playing the favorites. Like, what do you got? We got one of those. You like this kind of, we got one of these too. We got a ballad on here. We got all these things. But once again, they're still really young. This is 1985. So they did an album a year. So at this point, Dimebag is probably, or Diamond, Daryl.
Diamond.
He would have been 18 years old, So, it's still a really cool album. The thing that I love the most about all of these albums is just as a fan of Pantera and as a fan of Dime, because Dime's to me one of the greatest guitar players ever. And just hearing his beginnings is just fun, because sometimes in the early albums, it'll be guitar playing. You go, well, this guitar playing is good, but if you played it for me and I didn't know who it was, I couldn't tell that it was Dimebag. But there are always those occasional things that happen where you go, oh, I hear it. I hear it coming out. And that's always a blast to me to with these albums. But fortunately, something had to go last. And so I Am the Night, their third album, is what landed there. Moving on to number 9.
I just want to say real quick, my favorite thing about that album, and I'm going to talk about it quite a bit later, but what I will say is this: my favorite thing about that album is the fact that Vinnie Paul decided to put fucking hex pads on his kit. Like full on 80s hexagonal sample pads. I fucking love them. Yeah. At the moment I heard that,
it does sound like, it's very 80s, but it's also right smack in the middle of the 80s, a year that we just talked about.
Yes.
Whenever it was, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, something like that. That was
that was a jinx.
That was kind of. So yeah, with that, it's funny that I mentioned the debut, because I'm now gonna go way on over to Newfound Power by Damageplan for my number 9.
Oh, really? Okay.
And my reasons for this are, when I look at the list, I already have a huge relationship with the Pantera everybody knows, so that 5-album run from 1990 to 2000.
Yeah.
I'm also a massive 80s fan.
Yeah.
And it is down here solely as a victim of the era it came out. So
Okay, okay,
like,
I could see that. Yeah,
yeah. So like,
because this was
it
what
is
2003, 2002, something like
four,
that. For
2004.
2004. Okay.
Yeah, and this to me is like it has so many like hallmarks of the 2000s that
Hmm.
over time I've actually grown more fond of,
Yeah,
but I still don't love it as much as the 80s and 90s stuff.
I could
So
I could see that.
yeah, so let's jump on in. Like the
Hmm.
way I'm going to describe these songs though is with high praise because they're all fucking killer.
So
Um,
this was, for people that don't know, this was, Dimebag and Vinnie Paul, their new band they started, which I think the the vocalist wasn't a guy that was a vocalist previously. I think he was a guitar player or something. I can't even
hmm,
remember his name. But it's a different bass player and vocalist, and they started, Damageplan.
yeah,
And unfortunately only did this one album.
yeah, it was
And
tragically cut short by. I mean, everybody watching this knows what
yeah, and
happened.
they were on tour for this album when
Mm,
Dimebag was murdered. And yeah. But let's talk about the album though.
cool. Yeah. So, wake up, gnarly ascending thing, and that riff is awesome. Like
Mhm.
that, like oh, breathing new life is gnarly as fuck. Newfound Power, the title track. I mean, Vinny and Dime were an unstoppable duo, man. Like those two together, they were the heart of everything that
Yeah,
happened in that band. Um, Pride, and it makes me so sad that they're both gone.
yeah, yeah,
Like that is a massive void in you know. They were a bunch of dudes that should be celebrating a long legacy, and they're both tragically cut short.
yeah.
Pride is a very 2000s metal track in a good way, but I'm realizing when I hear it how old I am because I can still remember when that kind of hard rock stuff was coming out and
Yeah.
was current. And now I'm in 2022 and I hear stuff that comes out. I'm like, oh wow, things really have moved, And um, uh, "Fuck You" is mental. I love that song. Do you want to know what's funny? I was listening to this morning and I pulled it. I pulled into like my workplace car park with the windows down and I forgot what song was on and I'm just blaring "Fuck You" out of the car, right? And I closed the door. Who's standing outside? Like the store manager, and
Oh shit.
it was so funny. But because it's a Sunday, nobody was there yet, really, in the car park. So it was all good. I mean, I turn up to work blasting metal out of the car anyway, but I just thought, oh shit, the one song for my store manager to see. Um, oh man, Reborn. The groove here is tasty as all hell. Explode. You can tell that they were definitely taking a note from their more modern peers at points on this album. Like there's
Mhm.
certain points where I think, oh, that could go on like a new metal album, or that could definitely be on a Lamb of God album. There's like little parts where I think, oh, that they're listening to what's happening,
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Save Me is another very 2000s metal track.
Mhm.
Um, Cold Blooded, Ice in My Veins, fucking love it. Crawl is pounding stuff. Reminds me of like Modern Testament at points in that song. Blink of an Eye is a more melodic kind of thing. Blood Force Trauma to the Head. That song is fucking I was listening to it after the shop had closed at work today, and it had been a pretty stressful day. It's a lot of people have converged
Mhm.
on our store for certain events and whatnot, and it is just ugh. Yeah, it can get pretty stressful, especially when there's only two people on the department when really you need a minimum of three. But hey ho, that's what it is. Grocery life. Moment of Truth, slow, swinging shit. Love it. And Soul Bleed is this like somber closer, very Alice in Chainsy. And like really, I really like this. Have you ever seen that Top Gear meme actually, where like Jeremy Clarkson is like he's talking? I think it's James May, and they've got two cars, and it's like, I like this, but I love this,
Yeah.
and it really is a case of that. So yeah, following this, I mean we're getting into the love zone already. So over to you.
Awesome. So yeah, that's not. I'm not going to talk about Damageplan right now. I'm actually just going to go back to one you already talked about. My number 9 is Metal Magic from 1983. And the interesting thing about I don't know if it's all 4 of the first albums, but I'm pretty sure the first 3 were all produced by Jerry Abbott, which was Diamond Vinny's dad. Yeah. And he did a pretty damn good job. Like they sound pretty damn good for the time, and for essentially being independent releases. But really, you kind of mentioned a lot of the things about this album that are cool. I mean, I already mentioned that Terry Glaze's vocals on this album aren't really that great, and overall the sound's very reminiscent of who they were influenced by. So it sounds like Kiss, or it sounds like Van Halen, or something like that.
A little bit derivative.
Wearing their influences on their sleeve, but they were young, and that everybody does that in their early bands. But they were clearly a young band, like kind of still trying to find their way, and they were, using the sounds of others to experiment with, and they would get there. But like I said, this is just a fun album to listen to because they just seem like they probably were having a blast making it. Another thing I love about this album is the album cover, because it always makes me think of, I don't know if this is the same for everybody across the board, but it seemed like in junior high, middle school, so it would have been around like 12, 13, 14, there was always that one kid at your school that could draw really well, and he always drew pictures that were like, what at the time you thought he was he's like, oh my God, he's one of the best artists I've ever seen. But if you go back and look at it, it's like, oh, it's not that great. I mean, he clearly put some effort in there, but it's not that great. I had this kid in school that he would draw Ninja Turtles all the time, but he would draw like the old school comic Ninja Turtles. Yeah. And I remember he drew one for me and gave it to me. And I was just like, I had that thing on my wall for like a year or two. I was just like, this is so cool. I wish I still had it, but I don't even remember the kid's name. I just remember he always drew Ninja Turtles.
You want to know what's funny? I could only ever draw one thing, but I could draw him really well, and Dicks. I would always, No, I would always draw Dexter from Dexter's Laboratory. Mm-hmm. I loved that show as a kid, and I drew him on every fucking thing I owned back in school, on my rucksack, every book.
Maybe even defaced some textbooks with them.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because I'm rock and roll. Defacing a defenseless textbook. It's a callback to the Twisted Sister episode, but
I've never been able to draw. Like my older brother, he's a great artist and an art teacher now. But I've never been able to draw. And I remember around that same time, I wanted to draw so badly. I remember like sitting at home one day and I videotaped an episode of The Simpsons. And this is when The Simpsons was just out, maybe a year old. And at that point, The Simpsons was literally just 30 minutes of Bart going, "Eat my shorts, man." And that was the show. And so everybody loved Bart Simpson. And I just remember pausing the VHS and trying my best to draw Bart Simpson, and just
that's
getting
rough on the tape though.
I was just getting really, really frustrated. And then I don't, from that moment on, as a young kid, however old I was at that point, probably 12 or 11, I was just like, no, never drawing again. Screw this. And so like, that's just because anytime I try to draw anything, I'm like, what is this even? I can't even do a stick figure and have it look interesting. It's all wrong. I don't know.
I don't know if you ever had this. This might have been a consequence of, the edgy internet humor of my generation. But did you ever get that like group of kids that were like, I'm gonna be really edgy, and they knew nothing about like the Second World War, but they would like draw swastikas on fucking everything just to be edgy.
I mean,
Like,
I've seen that. I didn't really know any
yeah,
of those kids, but I get that desire to be controversial. So
every double-decker bus was just covered in them. That
yeah.
and burn marks from kids with lighters trying to set fire to the seats.
To be completely honest, anybody that draws a swastika, I would hope that they are just a kid that doesn't know any better. If you're an adult, then you should be struck down immediately.
The funniest ones are the ones where you can see they went to do a big one and they fucked up and it's just wrong and they like tried to correct it and it's just like two little splints and one's a square. Like it's like that's a whole new symbol, dude.
Yeah.
He kind of saved his ass, but we all know his
Yeah.
intent.
Young people are fun, aren't they?
Yeah.
I never really did things like that. I never did things that were the only way that I wanted to push buttons was, with like, I guess, once I got to like high school, it was like satanic stuff. Because I got into death metal and stuff like that. And so I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
But that, that was really it. But go back to Pantera though. The album cover is it's very charming in a
Dog shit way.
I like it. It's just so fun. Anyway. All right. So yes, Metal Magic. It's great to listen to the beginnings of Pantera. But it's fairly generic. Also, I think something I thought was interesting that I didn't know, and unfortunately there's not a whole lot of information about this, but on Metal Magic, Terry Glaze is credited as singer and rhythm guitar player. And songwriter. Apparently he wrote songs as well. But I was all like, but then it's just on Metal Magic. The other ones he's just vocalist or keyboards or whatever. So I'm wondering, like, were they like a 2-guitar band in Metal Magic? Because I don't know if I've ever seen any footage of them from 1983. But it's interesting.
That might have still been like the Kiss influence a little bit.
Could be, and it could be the reason why his vocals improve on the next one, because maybe like once he drops the guitar and he's really like giving it his all as a vocalist, then all of a sudden, he finds his voice, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, Metal Magic is fun, but it's not, I know it's a little bit expected to put, the early Pantera stuff at the bottom, but when I took a step back and really looked at everything, I go, well, they became an iconic fucking band, and these unfortunately are not iconic albums, so they end up going low.
Cool. I've actually ended up trying to treat them how I kind of treated the 70s versus 80s Kiss records, where I kind of give a fair shot to each album as we go up. But with that, I'm gonna dive into my number 8.
Yeah.
Which is Reinventing the Steel.
Nice. This is I was really hoping that we would mix things up a little bit here, so this is cool.
It's the fifth, I say fifth chapter in the Phil Anselmo saga, even though it's technically the 6th, but it's power metal's this weird transitional thing.
Yeah.
So with that, I feel about this album how I feel about Album of the Year by Faith No More.
Mm-hmm.
It's not bad by any means, but it's the first time you can tell certain members are a little checked out enthusiasm wise. Like there's a vibe there that there's some splintering.
When you say certain members, who are you referring to there?
we're Phil and the rest of the band. But I mean, I suppose Rex was kind of neutral, right? He was the one neutral guy, but I think it was mainly between the Abbott boys and Phil. But
yeah, I feel like Rex, he seems like a dude that's just happy to be there. He's like, he's a great bass player, can, hold down that rhythm section. He's there. He's a very reliable bass player, but I don't think he doesn't seem like a dude that ever kind of wanted to rock the boat. He's just like, all right, I'm just here to rock and roll, man.
But I would imagine he probably thought to himself, hey, this band is pretty low end heavy. Without me, they'd have jack shit. So he's probably like, they can get mad at me. it's the fucking 90s, dude.
Yeah.
But yeah, so reinventing the steel. Right out of the gate, you get Hellbound, which is this furious, straight to the point opener, and it just blows your face off. It feels a little underdeveloped songwriting wise, but I feel as though in a way it doesn't need to be overly complex, because it's just this like fucking pound you into submission. You're gonna listen to the rest of this album in a minute after I'm done kicking the shit out of you.
Yeah.
And then immediately after you get Goddamn Electric, and that song rules, especially that chorus. Yesterday don't mean shit.
Oh shit,
tomorrow's
man.
A day
that is,
you have to face.
I agree that like the Reinventing the Steel overall is like it doesn't stand up to a lot of the other albums, but that particular song, Yesterday Don't Mean Shit, that is that gets my blood going every time, man. Great song.
Yeah. I will say that does hype you up. That is see, that's the thing. Even on one of their like lesser albums, the first, it's like a 1, 2, 3 punch.
Yeah.
You've got to belong to it. Love the big reverb on Phil in this track, and the wacky riffs from Dime.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that I like the kind of riffs that Dime wrote that were just like not using any fancy pedals, but I loved it when he would bust out I guess, what is it called, is it an octave pedal or whatever?
Digitech whammy pedal.
Yeah, and so because he did, so there are several riffs he does where he uses that, and I'm just like, it just sounds cool. I mean,
yeah.
Maybe some people could look at it as gimmicky, but I'm just like, it sounds cool. So, but I'm also the dude that likes it when people make noises with guitars and not actual riffs. I'm all like, I like that.
It's funny, actually. Before we started recording this, I had the wrong Logic project open, and I had my microphone going into a guitar amp setting, and it started feeding back. And I started whistling, and I could literally do the sort of like dive bombs that Dime did by just whistling into this like sort of shit. Like, holy fuck! And
please tell me you're going to do that. Do a whistle solo on one of your songs.
Yeah. Oh man, I've got to now. We've come up with it.
Yep.
Oh, shit, dude. But Revolution is my name, dude. Oh,
yeah.
What a song. Like I remember the first time I heard that riff when it kicks in. Like, all of the stuff in that is just tasteful, I remember, and every time I hear a new Pantera riff that I may have neglected, I'm like, how many of these fucking things have they got? It's like a bag. It's almost like he's got Mary Poppins' bag, and he's just pulling fucking riffs out of there just endlessly. Death Rattle, this song, I've already brought it up. It's used in a SpongeBob episode that already gains it major points. We'll grind that axe for a long time. Brutal descending guitars. Uplift. That breakdown about 2.5 minutes in is juicy as fuck. Makes Them Disappear. It's a cool track, and I'll Cast a Shadow is a cool closer. I mean, this album is like, could be any other band's best, but this is Pan fucking Terra. So with that, it's my number 8. Had to go somewhere.
Yeah, my number 8 to continue my ranking of their older stuff. My number 8 is Projects in the Jungle from 1984. So clearly this is, to me, the best Terry Glaze Pantera album. Their second album, Even though it is easily them trying to make their own version of High and Dry by Def Leppard. Because it's even the vocals sound like Joe, and then the songs all sound like they're versions of Def Leppard songs. But it's a huge improvement overall. Like Terry's voice sounds great. The band sound great. The production's cool. I mean, it's very 80s, but I just like you, I enjoy that. There's just a really good energy to this album where like if I want to hear early Pantera, usually this is the album I'm gonna go for, because it is very 80s sounding, but for some reason I just like the fact that this album feels like it's an overall statement of what they wanted to do, instead of this is a little bit of Judas Priest, this is a little bit of Rat or whatever.
Yeah.
This is very, very focused. And there are some heavier riffs that start coming in with this. Yeah. So you get a little bit of that, of a taste of, and the progression in their early stuff is real. It's very minimal. If you're really listening for it, you'll go, okay, I see. But it's also got some pretty generic things going on here and there. So it is one of those things, like I said, where we're comparing it to what they would end up doing in this. Like, as much as I enjoy this, there's no way for me to look at it and go, all right, well, I'm going to rank this higher, because I'm just like, because I am, I usually am the one that wants to prop up the underdog, or an album that everybody hates, or a period of a band that everybody hates. I'm usually the first one to be like, hold on a second, is it really that bad? And it's true, these aren't really that bad, because I think for most people, they're probably doing Pantera ranking and they just throw these albums under the bus and go, well, fuck that stupid Glamterra shit. Let's talk about Cowboys from Hell. But that's not us, because I do like all of this stuff. Yeah, even though Projects in the Jungle is an improvement over their debut, it's still miles and miles and miles away from where they would end up. And so it ends up going as my number 8. So I'm moving on to your number 7.
Cool. I know full well this is probably going to be the most controversial placing of anything on my entire list, but I stayed true to how I felt about their discography over the last at least 10 years, and it just played out of preference. I had, as much as it hurts me to put it here, I had to put Far Beyond Driven, dude. And
wow.
I have my reasons.
I know. I mean, it's all, at the end of the day, it's all just opinions, and there's no right or wrong answer. This is one of my favorite albums of all time that you're talking about now. But yeah,
yeah. Here's the thing. Again, I love nearly every one of these albums here, but there's a thing about this album where I have to be in a certain mood for it, because it really is. There are a lot of weird experimental things on here which are super cool, but I kind of come to Pantera to just be like riffed to death, Yeah. Whereas on this one, the riffs that are there are heavy, but there's a lot of like weird passages and stuff, and it's cool. But I find that a lot of their other records have more memorable stuff on it.
Yeah.
Strength Beyond Strength is, the logical next step from, fucking Hostile, because like it's absolute insanity. The guitar tone is incredibly like nutso mode harsh. Blew my face off when I first heard it.
When I first heard it, that song, this album has a lot of like personal memories too, which I'll get to whenever I talk about it. But when I first heard,
it's okay.
Eddie's trying to close windows and he's just knocking everything over.
Can we do a little like speed up here of me like
here you go,
so sort of thing. Hold that thought. What were we talking about? Strength Beyond Strength.
Yeah, we'll get back to that. You do your thing.
Okay, cool. So
All
yeah,
right.
Strength Beyond Strength is pretty cool, isn't it?
No. What I was gonna say is that when I first heard Strength Beyond Strength, I loved it because for a long time I had a Vulgar Display of Power T-shirt, and on the back of the T-shirt it said "Stronger Than All." So it wasn't a song yet, but it always.
I have that exact shirt.
Yeah, but it said that on the back of the T-shirt, and I just remember I have my memories of that T-shirt were like it pissed off like the normal kids at my school because the number of times I would walk past somebody and I'd hear them say to somebody else, "I could kick that guy's ass. He's not stronger than all." I'm just like, fucking morons. And yes, they could kick my ass. Every last one of them could have. But I just remember then hearing that line in the song, and I was always like, "Oh, there it is. There it is." Like it's anyway. That I'll get more into that when I talk about Far Beyond Driven because it is one of my favorites. And it's out of all the Pantera albums, it's the most I have the most personal connection to that one.
Yeah, and it's also the heaviest album ever to hit #1 on the Billboard 200.
Absolutely went with and that's around they started to do SoundScan over here where they were actually counting the barcodes being rung up for the sales, whereas before stores and record companies could fudge the numbers and make things look #1 when they really weren't. But and if I remember right, the very first album to ever go #1 for SoundScan was Slave to the Grind by Skid Row.
Yeah.
Like that was the very first album where they actually were counting record sales, and Skid Row was #1. So,
which is
that's a great time for music when albums like Slave to the Grind and Far Beyond Driven are the #1 albums in the country. This country used to be pretty cool. I can't say much for it now, but still.
Like I know we're like camping out on like track 1 here, but that like it has that kind of doing new metal before it was cool sort of thing.
I mean, Pantera are a big influence on so much shit that happened after. I would say after Vulgar Display, like after Vulgar Display came out, that album is in what they did was so influential on shitloads of bands ranging in their styles of metal. And to be fair, half of it's complete shit, but there's some good stuff that was also influenced by Pantera. And I think that new metal, there's a little bit of Pantera in there.
Hell yeah. So with that, let's go over that. I mean, back at it again with the Digitech whammy pedal. Like, this is an excellent usage of it, man. Like, what a creative fucking thing to do. Especially with that, like, kick pattern, like, like, first time I heard it, it fucking. I remember having like a sensory overload a little bit. I was like, what the fuck? Humans are playing this shit?
Yeah.
And like, I know it's typical to heap lots of praise on Dime, but Vinny was a badass drummer.
Oh yeah.
He wasn't like flashy. No. He was really good at playing morbidly obese grooves.
That's a good way to put it.
Like, holy god, fucking damn! Like when they all came together,
beats.
Yeah, I still think like the coolest snare sound I've ever heard is that like fucking live show they played where the reverb on it goes for like two straight fucking minutes.
Yeah.
Like, shakes the whole fucking stadium.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then you get 5 Minutes Alone, which crushes.
Yeah.
Like that, and the guitar solo was so simple but effective, and the breakdown. There's before that breakdown, and there's after that breakdown. Frankly. Kind of took my groove virginity with that one because I remember thinking,
that was a big deal for me when this album came out. That breakdown, I was just like, oh shit, Which I know everybody loves to talk about the Domination breakdown, but I don't know. I mean, that's a good one, but man, this is killer.
For those watching, right, this is a Watchers exclusive. Here we go. This is the face I get from the Domination breakdown. Here's the face I get during 5 Minutes Alone.
Oh yeah,
there's a clear difference there. There's some malice involved.
Yeah,
fuck.
Like you're a little bit mad at how good it is.
Yeah, fuck you for writing that. Now I can't do it. But yeah, and then here we go. Here's my first exposure to anything off of this album though. With I'm Broken. And I first
one of my favorite songs ever. Love this song.
So good. There's real weird proggy turnarounds in there, but it's all so catchy. Especially that like I first heard this on Guitar Hero Warriors of Rock, and I probably played this more than any other song in that game.
It's also one of my favorite music videos. Even though it's just the idea is very simple. They're all in a room together with a light bulb hanging down over them. But just the vibe of that video, like that's the thing is that, around this time in MTV and stuff like that, music videos had gotten way overblown with Guns N' Roses and other people doing mini movies. And I like those music videos, but I was always a dude that's like, look, just give me at least one video where it's just the dudes in a room. Like that's all I really want. Because especially back then, because you were all like, oh, what do these dudes look like when they're playing? Because there wasn't YouTube, and you couldn't just readily find a live performance most of the time. And so it's like, I loved seeing that. Like, sure, give me a concept video for some other song, but just I want to see the dudes doing what they do. And I think I'm Broken is one of the best examples of that in a video. Just pure dudes in a room. Just a classic case of dudes in a room.
It's a killer song, man. And then here's the thing, right? This is where they've they've gone through all of here's the first 4 songs, the most accessible stuff.
Yeah.
We're gonna get high as fuck. It's like Good Friends and a Bottle of Pills. Like the fact a song like this managed to sneak its way to the #1 spot of the Billboard 200 album charts brings me immense joy.
I fucked your girlfriend last night. She called me daddy. I called her baby, and I smacked her ass. It's like
that's pretty good.
Fucking hell, man. That's gonna get taken out of context. And someone somewhere is gonna share it and be like, "Look at this creepy weirdo on this podcast."
Yeah, you can do. Shit. I think you can take clips of things from YouTube, do that, throw it on TikTok. Let's get it going all over the world. The real Eddie Sparxx.
With that, Hardline, Sunken Cheeks. Big old vibey groove metal track.
Yeah.
Slaughtered is so catchy.
So Slaughtered is, if you're talking about moments that I get mad at how fucking good it is, the middle riff of that song, that riff, if I was it literally makes me just want to quit my job and just move into a cave. Because it was like, what's the fucking point of trying to do anything when that dude is just like, I got this riff, and that's the fucking riff. It's just the whole song is fucking great, but that gives me chills how fucking cool that riff is.
They're also like one of those bands where you've got bands that are like you're into how they sound, right? But they might not be they might not be a songs band. They're more of a vibe band, and they'll just have 10 songs. Some are killer, some are filler. Pantera were incredibly strong songwriters. They knew how to make catchy, memorable things.
But you know what? Now that you mentioned that, maybe we should talk about this real quick. We'll probably talk about it on the next episode too. But is it baffling to you at all if you listen to the album Power Metal and then you listen to Cowboys from Hell, that is a monumental leap in songwriting in just 2 years. So
fucking nuts.
Like don't even talk about this the shift in style. That's whatever. We'll talk about that too. But just going from songwriting that's very just like, okay, these are fine, they're cool songs for whatever this is, to literally like some of the most iconic metal. Yeah. So I've never really heard an interview, because I'm mostly interested in Dimebag's perspective, and if there is an interview that's out there that exists, somebody point me the way. But I've never heard like what happened, like what is it? Literally just they woke up one day and then he had these ideas and then it went there. Like if they were influenced by other bands, that's fine, but you can be influenced by a sound and not go on to write fucking fantastic songs. So I've always just been curious about like what the fuck happened? Like what was the change? What was because it's night and day. Like it's the big reason why I give people a pass for writing off early stuff is because of the huge fucking Grand Canyon that exists in the quality between your first 4 albums and Cowboys from Hell. So it just always blows me away that they got to that point. Maybe
Phil just knew a guy that was just a really high quality drug dealer.
Or maybe they all did peyote and they went on a spirit walk, and then they came back and all of a sudden they knew the way. And so it's like, speaking of I always just makes me think of Young Guns, which is one of my favorite movies ever made. But let's talk about Young Guns for a second. nothing to do with Pantera. Have you ever seen Young Guns? Is that one that's on your radar at all?
It is a movie.
Just do it.
It's a movie I've had queued up to watch for quite some time.
Move it to the top of the queue, because it's like you take an 80s movie but it's a Western. Even the music is like 80s movie music, where it's like it's supposed to be like the Wild West, but it's still got a guitar with it. So it's like with the Western style music. But there's a great scene where they all do like peyote or something like that. And then all of a sudden, things get weird. I'll leave it there because you got to watch that movie. Anyway, yes.
No spoilers, dude.
Yeah, I mean it's a Western. Actually, you know what? I could spoil things about it because it is a movie that like it unfolds in a way that you're just kind of like, this is pretty. It's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool movie. I'm sorry. I derailed us to talk about Young Guns.
It's okay.
I love it. I love it.
I'll get around to that ASAP. But right now, where are we at? We got 25 years.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like every single minute of this is nasty in the best possible way. Shedding Skin, the riff in this is also insanely catchy. Use My Third Arm, that riff in the middle, oh my god. Like the one that is also in the song Piss, which is a fun song. Just that Throes of Rejection has what I would call one of Vinnie Paul's cheekiest fills of all time, with that like.
So my only problem with Throes of Rejection is that over the years, especially in recent years, listening to that song, it really sounds like an incel anthem.
Yeah.
like there's nothing worse than a guy who's not getting laid and is really mad about it. And I'm like, all right, Phil.
And like that's the thing as well. Let's be real here. Phil, especially back then, he's a good looking dude. Like,
if you're into that, I guess, yeah.
Yeah.
If you like dudes with like that don't have long hair, like why would you want a dude that doesn't have long hair? Come on, people. Ladies.
That's why he grew it back, because during this time he was getting rejected.
That's what it. Oh yeah,
That's
and
why he grew his hair back.
even in the song, he makes a reference to him having a bald head. So I'm like, oh, he knew that he's like, oh man, girls love me when I had like the weird mohawk thing that was like shaggy everywhere. I wanted that hair so badly. Like I still do want to just cut like a mohawk, but then not stick it up, just have it to where it kind of hangs down and it's just all kind of shaved underneath. Because I saw like the live footage from the Cowboys from Hell, era when I was a kid, and I just saw his hair and I was like, oh, that's so awesome. I want my hair to look like that. But I was never.
Tell you what, if I ever had like curly hair, if I was blessed with like Jason Newsted like curly hair, I would also do the shaved sides thing.
Yeah,
but like just the sides, so I could do like the Jason Newsted windmill.
I did the shaved sides when I was a kid, but it wasn't like up high. It was just like on the sides. Like I guess it like Jason had it. I didn't go far enough up to where it be considered a mohawk. But also, I had a lot of questionable hairstyles when I was young because when I was a kind of a tween, I guess 11, 12, 13 around that time. I had a mullet.
Oh, I was gonna ask you, did you ever sport a mullet, dude?
But it wasn't a good mullet because I was a kid and I didn't want to do anything with my hair. My hair has always been this; it just falls flat. So literally, it was like a boy haircut, just like regular short, parted down the middle until here, and then in the back it just went long. There was no sticking it up or doing anything with it. It was just the saddest mullet that you've ever fucking seen. And honestly, I know my parents have some pictures of me with that mullet, but I don't have any. But maybe I got to go over and raid their pictures and be like, I'm going to get some of those and show them to everybody. But anyway, but then I got to the point where I decided that I wanted to grow my hair out all one length long, but I didn't want to have the mullet anymore. But my hair had not grown long enough yet. It had grown to about right here. So I literally cut it all to where I was like Dorothy Hamill, or it was like literally like a bob that I had. And I think that was going into freshman year of high school where I had like hair like that. And it didn't look good at all. But luckily, eventually it all grew out. And then through the rest of high school, I had like this, I didn't have a beard, but I had like, long hair like this. But
that's the cool thing about hair is it grows.
For some people, there are some people that are not so lucky. And, but how do we get on here? Oh, Phil's hair. Because Phil was a good looking dude, but yes, Throes of Rejection is a little bit cringy at times for me, but it's still, if you ignore, I'm going to have to go on record and say that there's a lot of Pantera, especially their latter couple of albums, that if I tune out Phil, the songs are fucking great. Usually, so there's a lot of Phil that I go, all right, man, but we'll get to that.
It's filler.
Oh! Good night, everybody.
Woo! I'm here all week. Oh, and then finally you get Planet Caravan. I love this cover, and it's a nice cool down from this album.
Yeah.
And let's be real. If any Pantera album needs a like cool down, it's this one.
Yeah.
Because this is like a volatile album. Like it has an anger management problem because it'll have like moments of solace, like still heavy, but like, okay, the edibles are hitting now. And then all of a sudden someone just like pulls out an Uzi and just starts firing that shit in the air. And you're just like, whoa, what the fuck, dude? Put it away, put it down. Why are you in my house? And
it's you got to point out that the album title is cool as fuck. Far Beyond Driven. Like that is the kind of album title that like you want to hear. Like when a band you love is about to bring out an album and they have a title that's that badass. Like Far Beyond Driven. Oh shit! Get ready. You're in for some shit here. And we were
to the Cool. So that is my penultimate pick for this episode.
Cool.
Over to you.
Cool. My number 7, wrapping it up, the early days of Pantera, a power metal from 1988, the first album with Phil Anselmo on vocals. Now, it does get heavier here, but it's still firmly rooted in the 80s. There's a lot of 80s-ish stuff on this. But it is clear that like Phil breathed some new life into the band.
Yeah.
But it is a very transitional album. So you do hear things on this album where you go, oh, I kind of hear hints of where they're going. But like I said, it's not, you'd have to, the only way you would ever know that is knowing all the rest of the Pantera stuff. Like then you can go back and listen to Power Metal and go, all right, I hear a little bit of it. But like I said, the difference in quality is fucking insane between this album and Cowboys from Hell.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, seeing as it's my number 6, we can camp out in this zone for a little while.
I think that unfortunately this album suffers from what a couple of their other earlier ones do, which is, to me, it's a little bit too all over the place. Even with stylistically and Phil's singing, like it's almost like he thinks he still needs to do the high pitched stuff all the time, but hasn't yet figured out a way to sort of make it transition with his other vocals. Because in Cowboys, it seems like seamless, the different things that he does. But in Power Metal, it's still a little like, I don't know, arbitrarily picking which way to do a particular line, With
this album, and I've actually got this as my first note for Rock the World. This Judas Priest album is fucking heavy, man. Because you can tell right out of the gate who his biggest like singing influence is, and that's Rob Halford. It does sound like a dude doing a Rob Halford impression. On Cowboys, when he does like the stuff, like he's doing that in his own way.
Yeah.
Whereas on this album, when he does it, he's doing it. He's trying to emulate a Rob Halford sort of thing.
Yeah.
So he's still kind of like finding himself. But yeah, then you get, the title track. Holy shit. Power metal is fun. It's just badass speed metal. We'll Meet Again. Just super 80s riffage going
I really like that one. It's very 80s sounding, but I don't know why that's a song that I've always really liked. It's not heavy, but
it's got a really tasteful solo as well. That just shows how much feel Dime plays with, Over and Out. Fuck me, this is so killer. I feel like I actually wrote this as I was listening to it. I feel like such an ass having neglected these albums for so long. This is also the first moment in any Pantera song that has a full-blown thrash section. They'd done the sort of halfway glam speed thing.
Yeah.
This track is brutal. And then immediately after, you have shameless 80s pump metal with Proud to Be Loud, which kicks ass, dude.
Which wasn't written by them. I believe that's Ron Keel or something like that.
Wow. It shows.
Yeah. I might be wrong about who exactly wrote it, but I think it was intended to be a Keel song. But I don't know how they got it. But I mean, it sticks out to me like a sore thumb on this album a little bit. So it is what it is.
But Down Below kicks ass. Death Trap got a fuck.
Which Down Below is a re-recording. It's on I Am the Night, I believe, and then they re-recorded it on Power Metal.
Yeah, Death Trap is cool. Hard Ride is an ultra 80s song. Mm-hmm. Fuck yeah. Most of the rest of this album, it was just fuck yeah, killer, nice.
Yeah.
But Burn is killer. But here's the thing: the closing track, Pussy Tight Tonight, or P star S star T star 88 is the blueprint for Steel Panther's whole career.
But what does that stand for? PST? Because they don't say
pussy pussy tight.
I guess so. All I know is that is like the first time I heard that song, I was like, did a different album just start? What am I listening to? And it's and you know what? That's the 80s, folks. Well, I guess Steel Panther would still do it, but normal ass bands would be like, you know what? We're gonna have a song all about tight pussy this time to wrap up the album.
I mean, a sizable chunk of 80s rock is about it. It's just a bit more subtle.
Yeah.
There's no one like you. Pussy's tight.
Tonight.
Yeah.
But and on PSC that's Dimebag or Diamond on the vocals. He does the vocals.
Yes.
But
good fun.
I really think that Power Metal is an album, though. I feel like if it was by a different band, it would be a little bit more embraced by metal fans, I think, because metal fans do like the stuff that they were doing on Power Metal. Like metalheads are into that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I think because it's Pantera, people will look at it and go, "Oh, it's stupid. Look at how stupid they look on the cover," or whatever.
Yeah.
And
you want to know what's funny? That like I have a zoomed in like photo or of them on the Power Metal album cover as my wallpaper on my computer right now.
it's a great picture of them. And honestly, this album. So like I said, they were promoting their albums as Cowboys from Hell was the first one and Vulgar Display was the second one. And I remember I went with my friends to a record convention when I was in high school. And I don't know if Far Beyond Driven had come out yet, but it may have been about to. But I just remember going to this record convention and then looking at this one guy's booth and Power Metal is sitting back there. And I'm like, what is that? And this dude's all like, "Oh, that's the first Pantera album with Phil Anselmo." And I'm like, "What? No, Cowboys from Hell. What?" I was totally blown away. And I was, and there was a part of me that goes, "I'd like to hear that." And he's like, "Well, do you got $500?" I'm like, even back then, it was really expensive. And so later on, I finally got to hear it and realizing that there was also 3 previous albums. And it was like, my mind was blown because I was just like, why would they? Well, I don't understand. Even back then, I was like, why would you just decide to not talk about music that you made? I mean, it's not like you were making, it's not like it was Nazi propaganda or some shit. It was just, but people treat it that way.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Well, you got the metal police, going around. Yeah.
About as useful as the regular police. Anyway. Fuck the metal police. I'm right.
Social commentary.
So yeah, Power Metal was my what number? I was my number 7, but it was your number 6.
Yes.
So wrap up this part 1 of Pantera, my number 6 is an album that you already talked about as well. Obviously, because we're out of the early days, one of the other Pantera albums has to make it as the top of the bottom. And for me, that was Reinventing the Steel from the year 2000.
And 4.
No, 2000. Reinventing the Steel.
Oh, sorry. No, I was thinking of Damageplan. Sorry, I had a.
You thought Damageplan was going to be on this episode, but no, it's in the next episode.
No, I got zoned out there for a sec. I've had a hard day.
That's all right. That's all right. We're nearing the end here, so we talk a lot. It's a lot of talking, like an hour and a half of talking. Who wants to do that? Anyway, Reinventing the Steel, a solid album with some amazing songs and some okay songs. The honestly, at this point in the band, Phil is a weak link to me. His vocals are real generic, angry, screamy guy stuff. And then that sort of halfway bluesy thing that he tried to do. But even then, the vocal lines are not that memorable. And a lot of the times the choruses are just him saying the title of the song over and over again. And at this point, it's gotten really old. Like the Phil-isms or whatever of his whole, like, I'm going to talk this part. Like it gets to the point where I go, okay. Because it eventually becomes
Pantera song bingo. You're just like ticking off all of the things.
But it becomes this thing that these are the kind of things that I say that piss off some people, and it's fine. I don't care. It's not just Phil Anselmo. It's like, because Phil Anselmo, obviously, in what he was doing, he ends up getting influenced by like hardcore vocalists and stuff like that. But eventually, it leads to this thing where there's so much music, so much modern metal and hardcore and all these other things that the vocalists just become, I'm just a angry white guy yelling about some general thing that doesn't really matter. It becomes like yelling and being angry just for the sake of yelling and being angry. When you listen to the songs and you're like, this is it. It's you're fucking suburban, people, and you're mad about what? Like, that's the thing, is like, it gets to the point where when Phil's writing songs about how he doesn't like how music is going, and I'm just like, dude, give me a fucking break, dude. Like, that's not
the convenience store down the street. Discontinue my favorite flavor of Monster Energy drink. Like, something like that.
That was really precise, but I liked it. That's exactly what I'm talking about. So so at this point with Reinventing the Steel, it is a whole lot of like, what are you yelling about now? Because before, I liked the fact that he did some singing and some yelling in it, but he would write his phrasings of things were really interesting and cool and memorable and hooky all the way through. Even on Great Southern Trends Kill, although half of that album vocally is awful. And I think that Reinventing the Steel is the same thing, where it's almost like Reinventing the Steel is I Am the Night, where they got to the point where it's like, you guys are going to need another singer. And then they got another singer, and just changed the name to Damageplan, which we'll talk about that guy in the next episode, because I don't think he wasn't a great vocalist, but he was something different. But so I've had to come to terms with that over the years. As much as I love, all of their stuff, including Reinventing the Steel, I've always said, well, what is it about it that's keeping me from like totally loving it as much as Vulgar or Far Beyond or Cowboys? And it always falls on Phil. It always falls on Phil's vocals and Phil's lyrics. So it sucks that that's got to be the thing, but it's the thing that makes these albums not as good. Because really, like, I love all of these Pantera albums, but you draw a line, around Great Southern Trendkill, but all the previous 3 albums before that, like, are 3 of the best albums of all time, in my opinion. So it's hard, like, putting those things together. But I really don't think that they could have continued and put out really quality stuff that would stand up to what they did before if Phil had remained as the singer. I don't think I've ever heard anybody really get on Phil as a vocalist, but maybe they do. It seems like they're usually just trying to poke at him being a racist or whatever, which, that doesn't help anything. I mean, I don't know if he's an actual racist, because I don't know him. But he has done things, obviously, that, you look at and you go, oh, that was, maybe you should, stop drinking or smoking or whatever it is. It's making you, because if you're truly not a racist, whatever it is you were doing that led you to do that, then, stop it now. So
there was the whole, what white power incident at Dime Bash about 6 years ago or something. And I don't believe he's like a full blown. Like, I don't think he believed what he said. I just think he might well have been drunk and did something fucking stupid.
Do you think it's the equivalent of the young kids drawing swastikas on the wall? Like, you're just trying to be edgy?
I absolutely do. I think it is a case of, I'm going to do something edgy. People are going to remember it. He might not have meant what he said, but it did cause a controversy.
Yeah. I mean, if it is a thing where he just jokingly does white power stuff, and if you're not in his close circle of friends, you don't know that. And especially in this day and age, like, everybody's got a camera. So all of a sudden, this thing that might be some sort of real cringy inside joke, and it's cringy, the rest of the fucking world doesn't know that. But it wasn't the first thing. Like, you see footage of Phil on tour with Pantera where he's like, I'm sick of this, it's a black thing stuff. Like, he literally, like, so he's been a questionable individual for years, but he hasn't gone so far as to where I'm just like, well, fuck him and everything he's done. But you know, I don't think he's truly. There's never been an actual conversation with him where he actually said anything of value about any of that stuff. It's always sort of just like pussyfooting around the actual thing, but it is what it is. I think that you're probably on the right track where for the most part, I think it's just maybe he thought it was a goofy thing to be so over the top with something.
It's kind of like saying a South Park joke out of context to someone who doesn't watch it, and they're like, "What the fuck is wrong with you?" And it's like, it's from the show. It's like,
but you know, the one thing that I have to say is that I'm never going to write somebody off like that. And so if it is the case where, you know, he's learned his lesson and maybe he's grown as a person, I'm going to allow somebody to grow as a person.
Of course.
There are plenty of people that have done things in their past that I look at and go, oh, fuck no, man. But if you look at who they've been, you know, for a large part of their later life or whatever, I'm all about forgiveness and redemption or whatever. And so
otherwise, you know, people wouldn't change. That wouldn't allow for people to change. You would just have people who did nothing wrong and people who will forever remain shit, you know, otherwise.
Yeah, I think that's a big reason why a lot of people get really ticked off about cancel culture, because people will go back and dig up a joke that somebody said 10 years ago. And even the comedian will probably look at that and go, yeah, that joke was shit, but they shouldn't be having to pay for it 10 years later. Like, you know, it's fucking stupid. Anyway, there are some things that people should be paying for, Kevin Spacey being one of them, but there's, you know, or Bill Cosby, but making a joke that maybe hurts some people's feelings. Sure. You can look at it and go, well, that was unfortunate and that sucks. But, you know, anyway, long story short, Phil becomes angry white guy just yelling at whatever. And I don't like that kind of vocals at all. But in metal nowadays, metal is 80% that. Where it doesn't matter how cool the fucking riff is, it's just some dude coming in going, rah, rah, rah! And I'm like, well, what is this song about? Oh, it's about he doesn't have the right jeans on. He has to
wear topic was closed.
He had to wear khakis. I'm just saying, it's like, it's never anything. It's never clever or interesting or memorable. It's always just another fucking dude yelling. So that brings Reinventing the Steel down for me. But there are moments like Yesterday Don't Mean Shit and stuff like that where I go, I'm on board with this. I like it. I like the way I like the whole presentation of it. But I'd say half the album, or maybe even more of that, the vocals are kind of what drag it down to where it ends up at this point. Because the fucking riffs are there. The riffs are there. Band sounds fucking fantastic. So yeah, I really just think, and of course, and I do think some of the songs on here go on a little bit too long. And that's a first, because I think that, you know, all of their prior albums, there's not really a song where I go, oh, does this need to be that long? I don't think that doesn't happen until Reinventing the Steel. So clearly, as much as I do like this album, clearly they're compared to like everything else, you know, from the Phil Anselmo years, like I like a lot more. But which sucks, because this is the Pantera swan song. Like, it's, you know, it's the last album that they will ever have done. I don't know what would have happened if they had gotten back together. Because I'm sure they would have. Just knowing what I know about all of the guys, and just knowing what I've seen with people who are in, you know, legendary bands getting older, maybe it wouldn't have happened within 10 years, but I think eventually there would have been a Pantera reunion. And maybe it would have been awful, because, you know, I have no idea. But either way, we can talk more about that on the next episode, because we still got 5 albums each to talk about from the Pantera discography. But Reinventing the Steel was my number 6, which wraps up the first half of our Pantera ranking. And I knew that we would have a lot to talk about with their albums, and so you definitely need a 2-parter for Pantera. So Peanut Butter Platypus, as usual, to those of you.
Peanut Butter Platypus.
who hang on and go buy some merch if you haven't already. You can shirts and mugs and hats, and there's even a cooking apron you can get.
Nice.
Whatever, there's all sorts of things. Anyway, yeah, so that's it for this episode of Cranked and Ranked and part 1 of our Pantera ranking. Any parting words for the peeps out there?
Yesterday don't mean shit. Because tomorrow's a day you have to face. That's
true. Yeah. And I don't have a good Pantera quote.
Some dude said that. Can't remember who.
Yeah. I'll just say respect, walk. What'd you say?
You talking to me?
All right. Before we limp, we're going to be limping our way to the end of this episode. Yeah, that's it for this episode of Cranked and Ranked. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll be back next week with part 2 of the Pantera ranking. And as usual, throw it over to Eddie Sparxx to take us out.
Later!